Round, it's ready.
All right. Okay, so we're going to get started. All right, so in the second half of the class, I'm going to go through 6 different areas that we can minister to our missionaries during the different stages that they're going through these things. So I gave you some handouts, and actually the last 2 pages of those handouts I think are the same thing. They're just, we've taught this a couple of different places, so I think that there's one with lines and one that doesn't have lines, but they're the same basically information. And so you can jot down some of the ideas that I'm going to give you if you want to use that piece of paper. So let's start with moral support. So moral support is basically giving an encouraging word, right? Coming alongside of them, speaking life, speaking encouragement. Joshua 1:9 says, "Be strong and very courageous. Do not be afraid or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." What an incredible verse to give to somebody, especially in the beginning when they get that call of God, right? And they're afraid and, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And just to speak life into them, that God is going to be with you wherever you go. Be strong, be courageous. Let's step out. I'm behind you. I'm going to, I affirm what God is doing in your life. So moral support is critical throughout the missionary's entire journey, but throughout different phases, it can be displayed in different ways. So between the call and then when the call is confirmed, your missionary needs to hear that you're behind them. That you believe in him. And right then, during that call, their emotions, like we've said, are already struggling with their own feelings of inferiority, right? I think of Moses when God called him, right? But I can't speak, but how am I gonna? He was so afraid, and yet God Almighty was speaking the call out of a burning bush, right? So he knew he was talking to God, and yet what did he do? He looked in and he saw his great lack, and that's what your missionaries go through as well. So you may hear them finally step out and say, I'm called to wherever it is. For you just to come and to lay your hands on them and speak life into them and just, affirm that call can mean so much, because their emotions are kind of like everywhere at that season. Well-meaning people say really hard things during this season of the call. You're going to go to that closed country. Don't you know they burn Christians alive there or cut off their heads? Yeah, I did know that. Thanks for telling me that. That's so encouraging. Why would you go halfway around the world? There's so many people that you could help right here. Why don't you just go to LA and help those people? That was said to us. You're going to waste your education out there in the middle of nowhere? What will your dad say after all he paid for that college degree? Or maybe your dad is saying, what? I just paid for your education and you're going to go waste it in the middle of nowhere, What about your kids' education? They're going to be ignorant. You can't, how can you homeschool? You can't homeschool. Where are they going to get educated? How are they going to be able to fit back into society if you bring them overseas? All these things. You expect to get married out there? You're never going to meet anybody. That's definitely something that goes through a single person's mind. You're leaving America and you're going to go to this whole other culture and you're thinking, I kind of want to get married, But man, we have seen God be faithful in that area. And just as Rob shared with one of our guys leaving here, going to Uganda, meeting a Sri Lankan Christian woman and getting married and now starting Calvary Nairobi years ago. God's faithful to take care of your needs. All those things that people say, they might be true. And a lot of times there's a thread of truth in it. And believe me, your missionary has already thought about all those scary things and more, right? But that's why, because well-meaning people are going to say these kind of things to these missionaries, you need to be the person that stands behind them and speaks life. I believe in you. God's with you. That is so awesome. Tell me about it. What do you know so far? How can I pray for you? That can really just do so much to just blow into the sails and get them going forward. Moral support is also needed during the seasons of disillusionment and coping. That's the time that your missionary feels most forgotten and they want to give up. Remember, they feel so isolated and so alone. It's mark your calendar for that 6th month, because it's about 6 months from the day that they left, that right there they're entering that coping, just hanging on, really feeling like, okay, it's been 6 months, I don't get emails anymore, I just completely feel forgotten. So having that moral support of someone just sending them an email out of the blue and just saying, hey, I thought about you today, and I prayed for you, and this is what I prayed for, boom, boom, boom. Let me know if there's anything else. And now we have Facebook. Like when we went, we didn't have Facebook. But Facebook can be an amazing tool, but it can also be a tool used by the enemy to make your missionary feel really alone. They're pouring their heart out and they get like 3 likes, and then they're scrolling Facebook and they see that you made pasta dish for dinner and you got 50 likes, and they're just like, so the enemy will use that. So we do need to just be sensitive, like just take a second and don't just do a comment. It really does make a difference. It makes them feel like they're not forgotten. And it's just such an easy thing for us to do. One of the things is to ask them how you can specifically pray for them, not their ministry. Because remember, 6 months into it, they might not be doing anything that they can show for. Like they went over there with great ambition, but sometimes it takes a long time, and there might not be one convert. They might be just learning the language and holding on, saying, I feel like I'm out here and the church is paying for me and I'm doing nothing. So when you ask them, so what great things are God doing? They might not be able to share one of them, but they can always share with you what God's doing in their heart. What's God doing in your team? What's he doing in your heart? How can I personally pray for you, for your walk with the Lord? Is there a team dynamic I need to pray for? Are you discouraged right now? Those are the types of things that will be easy for them to talk about. And I'm sure they'll tell you if something good's happening anyway. So moral support is also critical when your missionary returns back home from the States. They've gone through really hard things. For us, we had a feeding center and we had lots of babies died, but one day was a really tragic situation where one of the babies died and the mom had lost all her children. And so this last one that we were just trying to keep alive from malnutrition, it died. And I remember one of the missionaries, she had borrowed my skirt that day, and she came home wearing something different. And we just been talking, passing before I heard about her day. I'm like, hey, where's my skirt? She's like, well, baby Sophia died today, and the mom didn't have anything to bury the baby in, so I took my skirt and we wrapped the baby in their skirt, and I dug the hole, and the mom and I buried the baby and prayed over the baby. I mean, there was just like nobody, no family, nothing. So these missionaries sometimes have experienced really difficult things, and they now come back home to the States, and they start to barely share some maybe things that are just the lighter things, ready to want to share the more difficult things that God did while they were overseas. And then the American goes, hey, let me, kind of cuts them off. Hey, let me come show you my new Hummer. Or, hey, I just got a new SUV, come check it out. And you're just like, what? The re-entry to something like that. Like we went through a robbery. We had a security guard risked his life for us and died in our vehicle. And we removed his body. And then we had to take the dead body to get a coffin and deliver the security guard to his family in a coffin. I mean, talk about post-traumatic stress from this whole experience. And we came home on furlough afterwards. And I remember, even though I was coming home short term, it was one of those times where I was going to go back. But I remember like just looking at people and just feeling like I just wanted to find the one person on my team. His name was Christian. And I just wanted to go stand next to Christian because he was safe. Like he was and I couldn't even talk to people. And then it was really hard because you come back home and your missionary has been placed on this pedestal where maybe your pastor has been talking about all these things and everybody, and maybe they even pray for you on Sunday, which is awesome. You want them to do that. But they come home and it's overwhelming. People that they don't know, that they've never met, are saying, hey, Heidi, how are you? Hey, we're so glad you're home. And they're looking at me face to face. They don't ever even introduce themselves to me. They don't know that I don't know them. And I'm just feeling like so insecure and so overwhelmed. And also, maybe when your missionary comes home, they're not in the best spiritual place. Maybe their marriage is almost falling apart. Maybe their teenager on the field is backslidden or like fell into gross sin on the field and they're ashamed. And they're coming home and they're like, they just need somebody to not look at them like they're super spiritual and like you go to your missionary, you get all this great spiritual advice from, like they could be hurting too and they could need ministry. So they're not all like that, but there are some that also need your ministry. So re-entry is such an important time to just be there for them in the form of moral support. The next thing is logistics support, and that is all the bits and pieces. I think about those that are gifted in administration, they can really help in this area. So it's so important when your missionaries on the field, they've come from America where you can get anything you want at any place you want, even a 24-hour Walmart. I mean, it's just like at your fingertips, whatever you want, you can get it. And then they moved to this country and they're just, I remember us pulling our hair out, just trying to put some bunk beds and buy some kind of sheets and matching comforters to go in the guest house that we had a guest house in the city that somebody wanted us to furnish. And it was like pulling our hair out just to do something that seems so simple that I was so good with here in the States, but I'm over there and I can do nothing. And I think about Paul, like Rob was mentioning, in 2 Timothy 4:13, he says, when you come, please bring the cloak that I left with Carpus at Troas and the books, but especially the parchments. So Paul had people in his life that he could count on, that he could contact and say, hey, I have this specific need. Could you go and run over there and grab that thing and make sure on the next missionary trip you give it to so-and-so so that you can bring me my cloak or my books or whatever I need. This is the ministry of logistics support. It's somebody back here saying, what do you need? You need printer cartridges? You need hair dye for your hair? There was a season where Rob was bringing over black hair dye for one of our older women missionaries, and that made her feel good about herself. And as stupid as hair dye is, there's something about feeling like you just look presentable when you're over there, and she couldn't get it over there. We had people here that we could contact to fill boxes with school supplies and crafts for the kids and books and homeschool supplies. And then what was so cool is these groups of people would get together on a Saturday, they'd go shopping for what we needed, they'd go back to my mom's house, they'd pack a tub and weigh it so it's exactly 70 pounds, and then they would drive it to the house where that was going to be the next team that was going to come. They'd grab one of our pre-packed boxes and bring it to us. And I remember those times where I'd open those bins and I'd be like, yes, they sent me big hunks and Doritos. And I would be so excited just to have that taste of home. So, asking them, do you want taco seasoning? What can I throw in there that's going to bless you? And just thinking about those things that they can't maybe get where they're at. Maybe your missionaries had to leave before, as they were leaving to move overseas, and they weren't able to sell their car. Well, as a logistics support, you could say, hey, give me the whatever it is, the power of attorney or whatever, and I will sell this car for you. Go ahead, you be free to go. I'm going to sell this car at the best price. I'll put that money in your account. Something like that could take a whole load off of their shoulders. Or maybe they need a place to store their belongings while they're overseas, and you could volunteer your garage. Or you could say, hey, I got a good job. I'll even pay for your storage unit. Don't worry about that. Don't let that come out of your support. What you're doing is you're just saying, how can I connect with you? How can I support your ministry and support you in a practical, logistic way? When we left for Sri Lanka, I had boxed up everything that was in the cupboards, but my whole house with all its decorations, its bedding, its curtains, everything, it looked like our house. And I had a group, my mom and my aunt and my sister and some ladies from the church that basically said, we had 3 little kids at the time. And it was difficult I didn't want to live in like white walls. It was so much easier and comforting to me to still be able to live in my house until the day that we left. And so even though I had done the bulk of everything and the garage was packed and the cupboards were basically packed, the house looked like my house. And I remember getting in the car and driving down the street. And then my mom told me later that she went in with this group of people. My poor sweet mom just bawled her eyes out as she took down all of our decorations and packed everything away. And then my dad handled getting renters for the house. And then it was really cool because he was able to manage the people living in our house and then send that money to us in Sri Lanka, which allowed us to pay for our house. So just having people like that can take some of that burden from you, and it's basically you're saying, I love you, I'm supporting you, I'm behind you, and I will do that, in a really practical way. The next way you can support people is with financial support. And this is just talking about money because obviously they need it. And maybe it's your own money, whereas you're committing a certain amount that you're going to say, hey, you can count on me to give you X amount. Or maybe a certain need comes up and you say, I want to take care of that need. But maybe it's you helping raise money for that missionary. Because when they're here on furlough, that's what they have to be about doing. And let me tell you, that is really hard It is so humbling when you have worked your own job and provided for your own family, and then you have to make that transition of going, okay, yes, Lord, I know you're providing for us through other people, but we still have to go and present the need and present the ministry. It is difficult, especially as a man. It is very difficult to be in that position, especially if you're a giver and now you have to learn how to be a receiver. That's difficult for your missionary. So anything that anybody could do in the States to help them raise that support. So I'm going to give you some practical ways. When your missionaries are on furlough, they got to do this. But some of the things that I've done with my kids for some of our missionaries is we did a lemonade stand. I have a lemon tree in my backyard, and my kids love always making lemonade. And we live near a golf course where the golfers will go there. So we parked it right there on a really hot day, and we put pictures of our African missionaries right there. And we said, you know, hey, we obviously sold them, and my kids were cute and little, but they were like, hey, do you want to buy lemonade? And all the money we make today is going to go to Africa to help these kids in their school, you know? And so, of course, all these guys who have a lot of money and they're on the golf course, they're like sticking 5s and 10s and 20s in our little lemonade jar. And it was awesome. And my kids were so excited. So not only am I helping the missionaries, but I'm helping give my kids a heart for missions. So just little things. You could organize a golf tournament. This is really, it goes along with logistics as well, but get businesses to donate products for raffles. And then that money, whatever, you know, as you go out and go door to door, all the different businesses, that helps, you know, get money as the raffles will bring that in for the ministry. Have your missionaries send you crafts from the field, and then you be the one responsible for selling them at your church. So ask your pastor, hey, can I do this? Our Kenyan missionaries, their Kenyan women make these little things. Can we sell that on a Sunday? And then, so they just need a go-between. Maybe you could be that go-between. I know our church got creative. Our women's ministry decided we always do special like women's events, and we said, let's do one this year called Twice as Nice, and we'll have women of the church donate lightly used clothes that still are stylish, and even all the jewelry and stuff, and we displayed it like it looked amazing. It looked like this incredible boutique, even though everything was free and donated, and we put everything on hangers, and we had it on sizes, and it was a lot of work, but we raised so much money. And so women came to the event, we gave them lunch and did a speaking and everything, and then they went and they shopped at our Twice as Nice boutique, and all the proceeds went to, we divided the check that we made, and it went to all of our different missionaries. And that day we took pictures, and each table had a different missionary that our church supported, and the ladies took that picture and were praying and laid hands on that picture and prayed for it, and we were taking pictures, and so when we sent the check, we also said, this is what we did. So how does that make your missionary feel? Connected, loved, thought about, I'm not alone, right? I'm not isolated. This church is with me, they're for me. Look at all that they did for me, you know. So it's a lot. It's like, you know, when your husband buys you flowers, it's like, it's not the flower, it's the thought. It was the same thing with your missionary. It's the thought, just that somebody's thinking of them. There's another really great ministry called bloodformissions.com. And your church can do the signups and organize it, and this ministry comes in and has the nurses that handle all the blood draw, and they give $20 per unit of blood. So we've done this at our church before, but they need somebody to spearhead this, right? So maybe that could be you. So $20 per unit of blood, and then you can send that to whatever mission thing you want. This is pretty cool. You could get your youth group to do a coffee bar or sell ice cream sundaes, and then give that money to a missionary. So, you know, it's endless. It just takes thought. So just pray about it. And the amount doesn't matter. It's really just that they were being thought of. The next way is prayer support. And this is where we get into intercession and spiritual warfare on behalf of your ministry. The words of Augustine sum up the reason why we need to pray. He said, without God, we cannot, but without us, God will not. I like that. Without God, we cannot, but without us, God will not. For some crazy reason, God has chosen to work and to share the gospel through humanity, human to human. He doesn't just let the angels just preach it and everybody gets saved. He calls us to be his hands, feet, and voice. And we can do this through prayer. So in God's sovereignty, he has voluntarily linked himself to human cooperation. He wants us to pray. He wants us to ask. He wants us to knock. He asks us to do that. And he promises that the effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man will accomplish much. If you're going to give genuine prayer support to your missionary, then in the spiritual realm, you are promising to stand side by side with him or her and come against Satan's hold in that area that they are working on. So if you are going to do that, you need to realize you are entering spiritual warfare too. There is a sweet couple who has told Rob and I, hey, we know that your ministry needs help. We want to come along stateside and help you. And the first thing I said to them is, be ready to have your marriage affected. The enemy does not like the gospel going to unreached areas. So if you're going to come alongside of us and you want to support us, through like office work and things like that, you're going to get hit hard. The husband got hit with severe depression within the next couple of months. They've gone through a lot of marriage things. They've had a lot of family issues. So it's just, if you are going to stand and you're going to be that thrust behind the tip of the spear for your national missionary to go in and get that work done, you are going to be affected in the spiritual realm as well. Missionaries need what Ezekiel 22:30 calls someone to stand in the gap. It says, and I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. And that's God speaking. He was looking for somebody who would stand in the gap for the people that he wouldn't destroy. I think of Abraham. He was a man who stood in the gap for Sodom and Gomorrah and begged God, be gracious. God, no, don't destroy this people, even though they're wicked. Think of Moses standing in the gap between God's destruction of the Israelites, and he interceded on their behalf. So we can do that on behalf of our missionary, standing in the gap for that country, that nation, that people group, that ministry, and asking God to show mercy and to open the blind eyes. Through prayer, you are helping your missionary prepare the hearts of those that he will be evangelizing. That is so cool. You're going to go to heaven and stand before God one day, and he's going to say, just like that missionary, I could just see you like standing side by side with that missionary, and then all the people that got saved through that ministry. And he's looking at the missionary, but he's also looking at you and said, you stood in the gap. You interceded. You gave. You were the logistic support. You were the encouragement that got that missionary to be effective. And here's the fruit of both of your labor. I mean, that is just a powerful thought to think. Your prayers water the seed that the missionary plants. Your prayers open doors for your missionary to preach the word. Colossians 4:3 says, pray that God would open to us a door for the word that I might preach. So Paul's saying, pray that these doors would be open so I can preach. Now, Paul was a powerful preacher. We know he was a maniac. He preached everywhere, but he asked the church to pray for the doors to be open so he could do his work. So God has given us the privilege to co-labor alongside of our missionaries through prayer. There's a really cool story. Have you told them the story about Wes and Gordon?
I might have been in the class, but go ahead.
So there was a man who said to Wes Bentley, I am going to make a promise before God that I am going to intercede for you. And I'm going to ask God to wake me up anytime throughout the night. If you need prayer, I want God to put that on my heart. So Gordon was really faithful. He lived here. He was an older man. And he was really faithful to be praying for Wes's ministry. Wes works in South Sudan. He works in a lot of war zones. He's flying over really dangerous areas. He's crossing swamps with crocodiles. I mean, he is he's more in the war zone than we were. And there was a time where Wes was flying in a really small plane over the Nuba Mountains, and they were up high, and all of a sudden the engine of the plane just died, and the plane just started coasting. And Wes obviously is praying. Well, God wakes up Gordon, which is a totally different time zone. At the exact time that the plane died, God wakes up Gordon with an urgency to get on his face and start interceding for Wes. So Gordon wakes up, has no idea what's happening, but his heart is racing, he's sweating, he's on his face, and he's just interceding that God would protect Wes's life. And he did this, I don't know, for like an hour, and then all of a sudden he just felt released by the Spirit, like, okay, you can go back to bed. So Wes came home like a month later and was speaking and sharing at one of his events, and Gordon was there, and Wes was sharing about this plane, all of a sudden, because what happened with Wes was the plane engine died, and obviously right before it crashed, they were able to start it, and they coasted up, and he was okay. So Wes was sharing this crazy experience about the plane engine, and obviously Wes was praying and God answering his prayers, and Gordon has his prayer journal with him and says, wait a minute, in front of everybody, what day was that? What time was that? And he compares his notes, and it was the exact day and time in a different time zone that Wes was crashing. So obviously everybody in the prayer meeting was extremely encouraged on the power of prayer. And so to be somebody like that basically stands in the gap, is willing to intercede, and is willing to be used by God to pray for your missionary, it's pretty cool. The next form of support is communication support. So this is like letters, emails, Skype, videos, Facebook. In Philippians 2:19, it says, Lord willing, I plan to send Timothy to you soon so that I may be comforted when I know how you are doing. Philippians 2:19. One of the things as a missionary, you feel really disconnected, and you don't always just want to be talking about yourself. You want to hear from people back home, and you want to hear what God's teaching them. Like it's sometimes people are like, I don't know what to share. I don't want to just say like, yeah, we're Christmas shopping and what do we say? But like the heart stuff, what's God teaching you? I have one missionary, sweet girl in North Africa, and she always is saying, please, like I'm dying. Please tell me what God is teaching you. I just want deep, real fellowship. Please communicate with me. And so we text and we Skype and things, and it is cool because FaceTime, now you can FaceTime call and it's like free. It's pretty cool. In Africa, friends would video themselves at church and then have people talk to our team. So that was pretty cool. And I would speak in a tape recorder, because it was tape recorder then, and I'd tell everybody about my day. So I'd be like chopping, they could hear me chopping and cooking dinner, and I would just say, yeah, today I walked to Olga's house and I did this and I taught a Bible study and this is what happened. And my mom would then take that tape and duplicate it and send it to all my close friends. And so then they would speak in tapes and send it back to me. And even though it was like a month delayed, to be able to listen to somebody's voice and to be able to hear like my friend Megan talking to me and like have her kids in the background, I just felt so connected. So that didn't happen when I was in Sri Lanka for whatever reason. But we didn't have like that same kind of team support, and we didn't have this same kind of like people connecting us to people. And so I did feel a lot more isolated there. Say things that really matter, not just how are you, I'm fine, but share what's really going on with your life. I kind of mentioned that. When they go through a tragedy, call them on the phone. Don't FaceTime. Don't Facebook. Don't like when you see something on Facebook and something like, their kids got diagnosed with something or they lost somebody in their ministry, that's when they need to know somebody cares enough to actually call. Because if whatever you see in print is just the tip of the iceberg, and that's when you say, okay, Lord, you could help me. I could be somebody that steps in and ministers to them. When my niece got cancer, my good friend, who's my pastor's wife, called me and asked me how I was doing, because she knew that I would be falling apart because I couldn't be there to be with my sister and my niece when she was re-diagnosed with cancer. So that was a really special phone call for me. God could use you to be the one communicating with your missionary and then relaying to other supporters what the prayer needs are. So this is where when we talk about building a support team, which you'll talk more about in the next class, like semester's class, but it's really exhausting for your missionary to rehash the same story over and over and over again. That's just like, and if they don't have the time, but maybe you could be the key contact, and then you could get everything downloaded, maybe you're calling them or whatever, and then you write up the write-up, and then you send it to the support team. So just, another way you can minister. Reentry support. So this is emotionally and physically being there. Paul and Barnabas in Acts 14, it says, from there they sailed to Antioch, where they had been commended to the grace of God for the work which they had completed. So now their ministry was over. And when they had come and gathered the church together, they reported all that God had done with them, and that he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. So they stayed there a long time with the disciples. I don't know about your church, but if you have a missions night where you're going to have returning missionaries come in and share and show their slideshow, it's really important that you're there for them. Just be there for them. Our lives are busy, but for people not to show up, it so speaks volumes to them. So it's really important to be there. So serving as senders, I wanted to read, Serving as Senders has a whole chapter on reentry, and then he actually wrote a whole second book just on reentry, because like we were saying, this is one of, the reentry team, this is one of the issues that is not normally taught, is the reentry trial that your missionary goes through. So I wanted to read, because I think he does a great job. It says, the situation of reentry. There's an initial shock in returning home. Old buildings have been torn down, new ones have taken their place. A favorite park is now a freeway interchange. The environmental and political climates have changed. The school curriculum and what is taught on 200 plus TV channels has changed. Grandma's rocking chair is empty. Your cross-cultural worker probably heard about some of these things as the changes happened, but now that he's home, he sees them for himself. However, it really hits him hard. As with an electric shock, though, these factors are gradually absorbed and accepted. The stress of coming home is another issue. There's a mental stretching as he's trying to incorporate new ideas and ideals gained on the field into the old, which isn't old anymore since it is also new and strangely different. Everything now has to be perceived through his new frame of reference. There's a spiritual duress caused by the continual memory of the needs of a world lost in sin and what we are or aren't doing about those needs. There is a real internal conflict as well-meaning people gorge their newly returned missionary with rich American non-food foods. You're so skinny, have some more. Like, don't take your new missionary who's re-entered back like to Claim Jumper or to like a really, just take him to like something really simple. There are conflicting emotions as perhaps your missionary tries to justify the new $500 wardrobe of clothes that he has just been graciously given him, or days before when he left the field, his national partner had been reluctant to receive a shirt from him with the words, "I have one to wear while I wash the other. A third one just isn't needed." So those are things to think about. Yes, the home scene with its people, places, and things, all that you represent has changed, but more dramatically, your missionary friend has changed. Socially, emotionally, mentally, physically, and most of all, spiritually. And because these changes happen to each of you so gradually, you yourselves are only slightly aware of them. But as you meet, the changes in each other appear drastic. Needless to say, the longer your cross-cultural worker has been away, the more pronounced will be the cultural stress in coming home. So that just gives us some insight of there is a definite adjustment and stress that happens. And I wanted to give a few warning signs. When do you know that these returning missionaries are not adjusting? These are some things that you might see. Alienation. They make excuses for not meeting with people or not coming to church. I had a friend who went through tremendous spiritual warfare in a very Muslim country in North Africa, and the year that she was gone was extremely difficult. Team dynamic was difficult, marriage dynamic was extremely difficult. Just the heaviness of the warfare, she almost felt like she just couldn't breathe, a lot of physical condition on her. When she came back home to visit for the States, she was hiding out. She wasn't coming to church. I would call her, she wouldn't return my calls, and we were good friends. We talked while she was on the field, so I knew some of the difficulties. But being now back home in the States, it was like she was afraid to go to church and be overwhelmed with all these people when she had been so alone on the field. To then immerse herself in a 200-person church was like shocking to her. So what I did is I called her, I said, "I'm picking you up." I said, "Do you want to like go to a Starbucks?" She's like, "No, I can't do Starbucks." I said, "Okay, how about we go to the park? I can do the park." So I picked her up, we went to the park, and we just walked out in nature, and I just let her start to unload, and the tears started coming, and I just said, "I'm worried about you, you're not, what's going on?" And it was like finally I gave her permission to just be vulnerable and broken and open up, and it just took a couple of times, and then slowly she was able to start coming to church, and and when she was at church, I stuck right by her. I wanted to be her safe spot. So just realize that sometimes when they're not doing well, they're going to alienate, and when they do that, that can be a really dangerous place for them. It's going to take them a lot longer to get, they need someone to help them bridge. The next one is condemnation. Is he negative about his home culture? So when you're with this missionary and they've just come home, are they criticizing everything about America? Oh, these Americans, they're so selfish and they're so loud and they spend money on everything. And are they really, really critical and verbal about it? Is he judgmental or explosive? Like, does he get really angry at the culture of America? Then you can help bridge that by being that safe place where he can process his emotions. Let him vent. Give him the time. Give him the permission to get it out. Sometimes they just need to verbally process, and you be that safe place so that they don't kind of blast the church with it. And the other one is reversion. Some don't give themselves time to process the changes that have taken place in them, and they jump right into the fast lane of ministry immediately. So some can isolate, and some can pretend that they've been gone for 5 to 10 years, and they come home and they're just immediately in children's ministry, women's ministry, this ministry, couples ministry. They're into everything, and they're just, and pretty soon there's going to be a break. And so watch that, because that can be a danger sign as well. And they need to give themselves the time to like slow down. So make sure somebody, if it's you or a missions pastor or whatever, is aware of those things. And if you see your friend falling into any of these behavior patterns, then your help is needed. And really, it's just take the time to listen. It's the best thing that you can do for somebody as they come back, is just look at their photos, listen to their stories, give them your attention, get a babysitter and just give them your attention. And go after them if they're isolating. And your persistence is going to show them that you care. So my prayer is that as we went through this information, that this will help to prepare you just to be somebody who can better support your long-term missionary while they're on the field, while they're, before they go, while they're on the field, and then also when they come home. So we'll close in prayer. You want to talk?
I have to do some.
Okay, you do some announcements.
Thank you, Heidi, for all of that wonderful insight. Like I said, when there's an issue going on with people on the mission field coming home, let me see if I can get my technicals worked out here. You want to talk to somebody that's already done it. A veteran missionary is the most important. And the best people to do that would be people that have worked in that same country that your missionary is coming home from. So somebody that's been in England for 10 years is definitely equipped to minister to somebody that's coming home from Africa, but England's not Africa in any way. Asia's not South America. Try to find people from the same region, because then the frustrations were the same, the style of culture shock was the same, learning the language had the same kind of issues in it. So find people that have been through it, and that's crucial. The 2 books that we're going to recommend tonight, and these aren't even just recommendations, these are must. Right, if you're going to be a sender, these are must. So serving as senders is for those that are going and those that are sending as they go. And then when somebody returns, that's when reentry team comes in. So serving as senders is that initial part. As soon as you hear, I'm called, or somebody says, I feel called, or I think I might be called, by serving as senders, if they're part of your church, give them a copy, and give a copy to your senior pastor especially. And if your senior pastor doesn't have the time to read it, and they probably don't want to read it, a lot of senior pastors are just too busy, there needs to be a missions pastor or a missions coordinator or somebody that's been given authority by the church leadership to truly handle this. Everybody needs to read it. Those that are going and those that are sending. And then the same thing on the way back, everybody needs to read it. These are like $10 books, $5 books that can truly change the complete fruit that's going to be on that tree or not on that tree eternally. So eternity is being weighed in the balance in all of this. And I was very thankful for Heidi's insight on people returning back home and all of that. All right, any questions on the topic for tonight before we kind of conclude with some announcements? Yes?
I do have a question. It's for Heidi, and I guess for you too. Where's home now?
Where's home is the question, okay?
So now home's here because we've been here. Home was definitely Africa. I don't feel like I ever really felt Sri Lanka was home. We were there for 2 years, so that might have something to do with it, because I really didn't get into that place where I felt like it was home. It was kind of like God called us home after those 2 years. So, so home is here now. But I hold home really lightly, because home is wherever He's going to call.
Yeah, home is where you are at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of it. That's what Hebrews 11 is about. Home is where you are at the moment. So for some people in Hebrews 11, they're within their home church, they're within their family. Other ones are living in the desert, hiding in caves and, goat skins and sheep skins. Others are being martyred. And to them, it doesn't matter. And so that's what God does in missions. He doesn't just allow you to be a part of somebody else's eternity. He sets you free to live eternally on the earth. So it was a true ripping and uprooting of my identity leaving America, but praise the Lord that it happened. Because now when I'm here, great, no problem. We live in a gorgeous house on a golf course with new cars, with a beautiful community, and then 3 weeks from now or whatever, we'll be in South Sudan. That's home also, right? And it doesn't matter anymore. You're set free to be a true New Testament believer. And that's what God did when he brought persecution on the early church, is he kicked them all out of Jerusalem through persecution, and they all said eternity is our home. That's the beginning of Christianity. We'll cover that in our third semester, a lot about suffering and how God uses that to set us free. Any other questions? You guys are good? All right. Get the books. Don't forget them. They're not just suggestions. They are definitely needed. Now, your final paper is going to be due on Thursday, December 15th. And I had to put it on this date because this is, I think, is the last date that I can get it onto the online thing. I tried to give you a bit more time to get that in because I don't want you to rush this paper. And once again, I'm not looking for academics in this. I don't care how you write it, how you spell your words. I want to hear your heart. This is called a reflection paper. I want this paper to reflect what God is doing in you, what he started to do at the beginning of the course, and hopefully even before that. As the course has progressed, you've been exposed to so many things. What has God done? So in this 5-page final paper, describe the key aspects of your personal worldview and birth culture. This is from the wrong class. I'm reading you the wrong one. This is from the cultures class. In this paper, if I can remember it correctly, describe how this class has changed your understanding of missions. That's what this paper is about. Sorry, I must have copied this over from another semester, so I'm giving you the wrong semester. So first of all, describe how your personal understanding of missions has been expanded in your life. Then describe the things that you think God is going to do through you, in you, with you, in your church, with this calling that he's now revealing to you. What does he want to do? So talk about what's happening now, and then tell me about what you think is going to happen in the future. Now remember, we all said there's only one thing certain in missions. Everything's going to change. So there's no way for us today to say in 6 months from now, and a year from now, and 10 years from now, this is the plan. I want you to look forward and say, Lord, I know you want to do something in me. Now, is that short term? Is it long term? Is it becoming a sender? Is it preparing to be a missions leader? Is it preparing to be a pioneer missionary and give up everything and go to the very ends of the earth? What is God calling you to? Okay, that's number 2. So how has your understanding of missions been expanded in the class? What's God calling you to now that you have this greater understanding of his will for you? And then number 3, what steps are you going to take? Practical. Tomorrow, the next day, a week from now, what steps are you going to take? Because we can sit around and theorize or can discuss it or think about it or just, say this is what should happen. No, what are you actually going to do? Now, we know all around us we have short-term opportunities, and there are long-term opportunities that are so vast and so across the board that there's no way to even talk about them in class. There are needs everywhere. Come to our mission semester next semester, which is going to be all culture. We did one class on culture in this one semester that we're in now. Next semester is going to be all on culture, and we're going to learn about all these different parts of the earth. And then the next semester after that, level 3, is going to be the understanding of what actually needs to happen in my day-to-day life to get me on the field long-term. And we're going to hear from missionaries that have come from all over the world. So what are the actual physical steps you're going to take? That's how I'm going to grade you. Okay, I'm not just going to grade you on, I had a great time in class and all of these quotes. No, this is what I'm doing. And this is what I'm going to do to respond to God's call on my life. So this will be due December 15th. And remember, no Word documents, no cloud documents, no Pages documents, PDF. You guys all know what a PDF is, right? A portable document format, whatever. Upload those to Populi, get them on there, and we will get those corrected and get your final grade in. I know I was a little delayed on the midterms, but we won't be on the finals. All right.
What's the breakdown of this?
Yeah, it's on the website, and it's in your syllabus too. So sorry, I had the wrong notes in front of me. It's on the website. It's in the syllabus, so paper or electronic form, either one will be there. All right. There it is. Now I have it written down. Yeah, that's what it is. 5-page minimum, 10-page maximum. Upload those to populate. I knew I had it written down somewhere correctly. All right, cultural dinner. We all are invited to a cultural dinner, and this will be Friday or Saturday. You can choose which one works the best for you. This will be December 8th or December 9th. This is not this Friday, but the following, not this Saturday, but the following, December 8th and 9th. And for our first level class, which is what we're in now, we are going to be going to an Ethiopian restaurant here in Anaheim. And when I called today and talked to our friend that runs it, she's like, oh, I remember your students. We're going to have the best time. So I told her at least 15 people per night. So it's you plus one. So bring a friend, bring a spouse, bring a relative, bring whoever you want, but come with you and one other person and choose Friday or Saturday. And I will upload onto the website an announcement about this tomorrow, give you the address and the details and all that, as well as send everybody an email. So you'll get it in your email box or it will be on the website. Can I get a show of hands? Who would want to come on Friday? Anybody? Okay, that's good. And Saturday? All right, so we got one for Saturday. Would you be willing to do Friday? So anybody else for Saturday at all? Okay, we'll cancel Saturday then, because that would be really a bummer if I only did one person on one thing. Heidi, did you want to go Friday or Saturday?
What is this, December?
This is in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Good Friday. All right, so we're canceling Saturday. I'm really glad you guys gave me some insight on that. All right, we'll do Friday only, and we'll make it a big group, and we'll have a great time doing it.
What time?
That will be at 7 p.m. and I'll send you an email, address and all this stuff. There's just tons of stuff. It's in Anaheim. It's an Ethiopian place. It's really neat. They make this great cultural food. We ate Ethiopian food all the time when we lived in East Africa. It was the best food in East Africa. So I came here and found a lady that had just moved from Ethiopia with her mom. So it's like grandma and mom and granddaughter in the kitchen. You know, I think I told you guys when they make us coffee, they actually cook it right there in front of us. They fill the room full of smoke. I mean, it's just real good stuff. I went to an Ethiopian restaurant a couple years ago. It's been closed down since I went there. And I asked the lady for coffee, and so she comes out, and grandma's doing the whole coffee thing, and she's speaking Amharic, which is their language, not even English, and she's doing this stuff. So then she pours the coffee into this big homemade porcelain coffee pot, and as she's pouring it out of this homemade porcelain coffee pot, I'm like, what's all that stuff coming out of the end of the spout where the coffee is being, poured through? And she goes, oh, that's horse tail hair. So they take the tail of the horse, they knot it all together, and they shove it in the tip of this so that when they pour the coffee, all the grounds that are in this coffee doesn't come pouring into your cup. And I'm like, oh, that's really sanitary. But it was so authentic, that one got shut down. So the one that we're going to this week is not that authentic. They don't put horsehair in the tip of the pour. I mean, it's just really good stuff. You guys are going to love the food. It's a cultural experience. And to me, this is extra credit, by the way. You get 5 points or whatever out of the 100 points for the class just showing up. For me, if you don't eat it and you don't partake in it, don't even think about being a missionary. I mean, this is good food. It tastes good, but it looks really different, and it might taste a little different at first, but this is healthy. I would never give you guys something that would make you sick. We did try one place. It was a Korean place. It was brand new a few years ago. One of our guys didn't get out of bed for like a week. And it was supposed to be this Christian-owned great Korean place. It didn't happen that way. So everybody got sick, and so we don't go there anymore. Ethiopian, that won't happen to you. All right, any questions on cultural dinner? We're all good? Friday night? Okay, we'll send everybody out an invite for that and give you the details. Let's close with a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you for these few moments considering your calling on our life as senders. Your calling on our life to hold up truly, Lord, the arms of those missionaries that you're going to put in those foreign lands. Lord, give us the ability to hold onto that rope, to be the other part of that spear, to be the ones that hold up, Lord, the missionaries, to encourage them, to love them, to fellowship with them, to do all of the practical things that are needed, Lord, the communication, the finances, so many things, Lord, and then to help them come back into this society when that chapter of their life is done on that part of the field. Lord, we want to be completely given to eternity. We want to be completely given, Jesus, to what you died for, that the entire world will hear. The entire world will have an opportunity to come into fellowship And not only forgiveness, but eternal fellowship with you. Jesus, show us what you have for us. Light our churches on fire as you light us on fire. Lord, cause that smoke that's burning and that flame that's burning in us to catch wildfire throughout the communities of faith that you've put us in. Jesus, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the wisdom spoken. We thank you for the opportunity to not only serve you, Lord, but to serve those that are laying down their life for you. We love you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Next week, we're going to be hearing from Pastor Trent about how to truly be a part of a missions-minded church. I'll see you guys next week.